I have more conviction in gen art than just about any other art right now. AI art and gen art, and then glitch art for like cultural reasons. But gen art is so intuitive to me if you believe in blockchain art.
All right, episode 1. I'm super excited to be starting up this podcast. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a long time, so finally jumping into it. So for my first episode, I talked with Jared. He's the founder of the 8NAP Digital Asset Fund, as well as 8NAP Art, which is a artist accelerator platform that has had a lot of really amazing art drops in the last year or so. We talk about a bunch of things. We talk about his entrance into the space, his general take on the current sentiment in the generative art space and digital art space. We talk about opportunities for collectors and artists and builders in the space, and a lot more. And worth noting, this episode was actually recorded on the morning of July 19th, which was just one day before a massive Chromie Squiggle sweep and a lot of other digital art purchases, which has continued to occur in the subsequent 2 weeks. So wish I could have got this out 2 weeks ago. Sentiment can change very fast in this space, but Jared definitely called it. And I just want to say kudos to you, good sir. So on that note, let's jump into the conversation. None of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment and information purposes only. Please take everything with a grain of salt and do your own research. More information can be found in the podcast episode description below. Okay, Jared. So thanks for making the time to come on. It's good to see you, man. How are you doing these days? I know there's lots of changes that are happening on your end.
Yeah, I have a little one that's 7 weeks old. If you can't hear him crying in the background, I'm assuming that echo cancellation is doing its job and you can't hear. But other than that, I got my hands full building both a Web3 company and building a family.
Man, I know, yeah. So you have 8NAP Art, you've got the 8NAP Fund. I see that you're always hosting and co-hosting Twitter Spaces. You've got a pretty amazing personal collection yourself. How are you managing all this, man? I mean, you're balancing a lot, that's for sure.
I think it comes from passion. I love it. It doesn't feel like a job to me. The amount of hours I put in is not commensurate to like the burden, so to speak. Like I really enjoy it. I love doing this. I love connecting. I love educating. I love talking art. I mean, the other night I was up from 10 local time to midnight with a collector just chatting art. So yeah, I'm an old man, and instead of going out to the bars, I hop on Discord and X and chat art with people.
Hey man, I think there's a higher utility in that approach, to be honest. But to me, it's obvious. Kind of like the response you said, coming from passion. I mean, anytime that I'm chatting with you, and I just know how energized you are, to be in this space, and you have an amazing vision, and you make yourself available, even for this podcast, short notice basically. And you're just like, I always know that I can count on you to make time to chat about the space. And yeah,
I feel, and this is, we were talking off camera about this being an opportunity to document the time. I often think back to, if podcasting or even video recording was a thing, when Van Gogh or Basquiat or Jackson Pollock was around, or Picasso, what would be different? What part of their journey was left out or is somehow absent from history or the accounts of history because of the lack of that and the opportunity we're afforded now. So might as well lean into it. I feel very blessed to be able to have this opportunity and to be a part of many people's journey and to just kind of put my little stamp on this path.
For sure, man. It's funny when you say that, because I saw on Instagram there's these reels of AI generated videos of Moses and Jesus and things like that, and they got it looks like they're taking a selfie and they're just talking about what they're doing and stuff like that. And to obviously it's not real, but it actually helps you kind of think a little bit about these things of what would it have been like for these people 2,000 years ago or whatever, if they had an iPhone and they could just record themselves all the time, and for us to be able to understand them a little bit more. And it is an interesting thing, and we have those tools right now.
My mental model around this is that we're seeing it unfold with X copy, right? Like how many people have gone back through his Tumblr and other different sources and they pieced together different stories. I mean, it was about a year ago or so, like somebody found an old link to buy an NFT from not even from a deleted Tumblr post that was a reply. They found the link in the reply. It ended up being like kind of a defunct thing, but it was like $50 and there was like this potential treasure hunt, right? I say that, all people have is an email saying, congratulations, you sent me $50. And I think X even came out and said like that wallet and everything's not even active anymore. But the point being is, with this digital age and especially on the blockchain, there's a lot of stuff that's being documented and recorded, whether we're cognizant of it or not. And that digital footprint, I truly believe there's going to be some sort of archaeologist or maybe some sort of data scraper AI bot that's going to come back and piece together some of this. And I think it would be really interesting to see some things that come out in hindsight that are maybe not obvious now, or they get pieced together and weaved into a story that even currently isn't top of mind. So I'm all for this. I think it's going to be amazing the way it all unfolds personally.
That's so interesting. It's kind of like how technology and AI kind of evolution is going to maybe influence the whole provenance piece that a lot of us are kind of value, in the digital art space. It's interesting.
Another mental model is like how many, like during World War II, how many, soldiers wrote notes back home, right? And it was like this way to document their journey. And some of those more mundane things that are captured in the letter that are indicative, like we obsess over or the detail now, and we look at this is what it was like in the life of a soldier. I sat with Joe for 22 hours. We did, those are like documentation in real time that I think give extra color to it, and that would have been lost in the stories of the soldiers. It's not like they would have recalled some of these details, but we're able to extract that because of the documentation of the moment. This to me is that, but just aggregated at a far larger scale.
Yeah, that's super interesting. This is one of the reasons why I want to actually come out and do this podcast is to help kind of capture that moment, and also for me to be able to participate in that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you for doing your part, my sir. Good sir.
Hey man, I'm just I'm following your footsteps for sure, and doing palettes and perspectives, our Twitter Spaces for that was such a fantastic experience, man. So we'll see where things go. Maybe we'll pick that back up. I know we might have plans with that, but we got lots of plans. So just I guess focusing on the podcast right now.
Yeah.
So man, I kind of. I'm curious if you could kind of talk a little bit about how you fell into this space overall, because something that I've found is that a lot of people in our ecosystem, they really come from a variety of different kind of paths. So I'm just curious if you can kind of just share with us just briefly kind of, how you even fell into this space in the first place.
I'm an engineer by schooling. I was very mathematically inclined, but I always loved art. From being a little kid, I was always drawing and sketching. I took art classes. I went to art camps. I loved, still do, art. It was very intuitive to me. One of the things that I struggled with is I still can't get what's in my brain onto paper or onto a screen. Maybe I didn't practice enough, but it was always there. It was always a passion. I'll date myself a little bit, but like even I went to a camp where there's a cartoonist a long time ago who did a cartoon called Underdog. You could probably like look it up. It's like very vague, but I remember going to a camp and just like learning about sketching and cartooning from him. And I was, like I said, a young kid. Point being is it was always there. When it came time to go to school and uni or college, I realized that like art wasn't going to pay. I had to pay for everything. I had to pay for my own school, everything, and it didn't seem like the most viable path, and I had a natural inclination towards mathematics, so I did engineering. Went into the real world. I was actually just sharing this. I don't think I've shared this. I shared this in private with somebody, but I was racing cars for fun. And it got to be a really expensive pastime. And so I actually my dad did metal detecting, and he found a diamond ring. And just off the cuff, he said something along the lines of, you should find a hobby that pays you instead of wasting money racing, which is very logical, right? And I was like, oh, he's probably right. Anyways, Why do I say all that? It started me down the path of trading, and I started trading foreign currency. And again, at the time, I didn't have like a ton of money, so I traded foreign currency with 50x leverage. Yes, you heard that right. 50x leverage. You think like the crypto bros are crazy, but I had some level of success there and actually stumbled into crypto as a result of it because I was like, I love volatile markets, and you could trade crypto I've never traded crypto with leverage, full disclosure, and I could trade crypto without the leverage and still have the volatility. So I was there. I was in a couple different trading communities. I ended up in that community. Somebody recommended that I buy a punk. I think punks at the time were like $300 or the equivalent of $300. I
Do you
didn't get
regret
it.
that decision?
100%. I do in the sense that like I didn't go all in. It wasn't obvious to me at that point, but I don't in the sense that it like drove me to where I am today. And anyways, then they go up to 3,000. My buddy's still like, you needed to get another one, and I was like, hey, I had an exit strategy for ETH at the time, and in theory it was like it would have impacted more, and I was like, I don't get it. Didn't spend the time to dig into it. They went up to 39K, and I told my buddy like, hey, don't you remember 2017? Like whatever goes up must come down, and it just. Anyways, I missed the boat on that. Missed the boat on Bored Apes. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the community. It was just a cartoon monkey to me. And they were on my radar at half an ETH. Wah, 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 right? Like strike two. Anyways, I bought my first NFT, which was the Proof Pass, the first ETH one. I think I bought some on Tezos just to like mess around with wallets to make sure I didn't mess anything up. But my first was the Proof Pass, and I got in, and I started with speculating. I traded Clonex, ran some bots for listings, flipped them, and then they made some announcement, and the floor just like right place, right time, just shot up. I got airdropped a bunch of these little boxes. I don't remember what they were, but they sold for 5 ETH a piece. So I sold all of my Clonex because at the time, like I think ETH was up there. It was like 50, 60 grand for a floor Clonex. And it just didn't make sense to me. Like I knew that like with the Nike community, the PFP, I just didn't think that it was sustainable between you and me. And so I cashed out the ETH, and I asked the community like where would you go for longer term investments, and art came up, and I asked about like one of the best art projects. Chromie Squiggles came up, and that was my art pill. I went down the rabbit hole of Chromie Squiggles, and my obsession for the Chromie Squiggle absolutely blossomed from there, and that was what kind of kicked off the art stuff. So then I was able to be there when, I feel fortunate when Anti-Cyclones was minting, when Memories of Chilin was minting. So I was like, I wasn't there when Fidenzas were minting, but I do feel fortunate that I was able to catch some of the what I feel are really great projects.
Yeah, those are fantastic projects. Yeah, so a classic maybe example of came for the flip, stayed for the art, right?
Yeah. It's part of the reason why I'm mostly not against like flippers and speculators, because I do believe it brings attention to the space, albeit it's not the most positive, but it's still attention, and some portion of them stick around. And I think that I think humans in general are artistically inclined. I think that there's something about art that's viscerally resonant and passionate, and I think people, once they come and they are able to connect with some piece of art, that they'll stay for some reason, whether it's glitch, gen art, AI, or anything along the lines. I just think that I think if this space is going to expand, you have to bring people in, and part of the bringing people in is the speculation, like it or not.
So then tell us more about 8nap art then, and kind of what's the vision and what really drew you to
And I'm drawn to
create
your
this.
mission because you want to document the space, right? Like so I met a gentleman named Aston Cloud, or at least he goes by Aston Cloud online, through Proof, and we found a love for generative art. We talk about the details. We talk about this is back when Artblocks released the project on testnet beforehand, so you could see all the outputs. I knew it was rare. I knew it would like my aesthetic was. So I actually never minted the projects that we talked about. I was always trying to snipe the pieces that I wanted off the floor from the flippers. That's why I like the flippers, because guess what? They're in it to make a couple ETH or percentages of ETH, and I got to buy whatever I wanted. They weren't getting locked up in people's vaults, right? Like I was able to buy this stuff. So that's why I enjoyed the flippers, is I got what I wanted. But Aston and I started a podcast called Collector's Corner. It initially was a deep dive into long-form generative art projects, and we then pivoted into just us commenting into bringing artists on. So Thomas Lynn Peterson, TLP of Screens, was our first, and it was just a huge unlock for us, because it wasn't just us talking about the projects, it was us talking about the projects and documenting, to your point, some of the details for the long form nature of the things. And that became very important to me, is like getting the artist perspective of this and understanding what traits, more or less in real time, like when stuff was fresh, was able to be documented. The beauty of that is I was able to connect with a lot of artists. And what you'll come to see about this is, I think the beauty of podcasting is not just what gets published, but it's the 30 minutes before. It's the 1 hour afterwards, when you've created a meaningful personal connection with an artist, and you're able to BS about things off camera in a very genuine and authentic fashion. That was my red pill. Like, I was already red pilled, but like that was the thing that made me so viscerally connected to the art, the digital art, NFT art movement, that it became undeniable. And for 18 months, I had the idea of 8nap art, that is, and I tried not to do another platform, because it's like, you would ask yourself, like, you're late to the platform game, like and you think about it, it's after Art Blocks, it's after Super Rare, it's after Fellowship, it's after Verse, it's out, like, why do we need another platform? And it was a very legitimate question, and my response was, I want to do something that others are not doing, and that's the branding of the artist accelerator. I always say, I don't want to compete with Art Blocks, I don't want to compete with Fellowship, I don't want to compete with Super Rare. My goal is to take where a lot of these platforms have left off and help artists level up their game. And that was 3 moments that stand out in my brain. We were interviewing William Upon, and he talked about, he was mid-sentence and then stopped, lost his train of thought, and it was for Strands of Solitude release. And there was this moment where I was like, oh, artists need proper support. They need space. They need a lot to be successful. And William's a very dynamic artist, so he's obviously successful without the tools of 8nap. But like, what could it be with the tools, right? So that was the vision, is like to give the artist the tools. Then I had an interview with Snowfro, and it was evident to me that the squiggle, the thing that I love most in generative art, would have never been the squiggle had he not had time, right? And actually, I just had Noah from 101 on MySpace's Friday, and he was talking about like the original squiggle, the print off that Eric had. And most people don't know this, but it started as just like a program for like a squiggly line. It was thin, longer. It's beautiful, but it wasn't the squiggle we know today. And through experimentation in, I think it was like 2.5 years, he created what we know as the squiggle today. And in that duration, it was like, me just recently picked up a slinky, right? So he created the slinky instead of just the regular one. And then he started messing around, and it was the ribbed as a result, which was a variant of it. And then he started playing with the fuzzy. And that gave me the idea of like, sometimes great art, I don't know, here's a crazy concept, takes time to be great, right? Like like this ideation. And the quick burn and churn of the industry was a little bit, didn't feel appropriate to me. So I came up with the concept of like, let's give artists the proper space and time to create their art. So if you notice with 8nap art, like, we don't have like a set release schedule. Many times I've pushed the art either from a curatorial perspective or at the artist's desire. And it's because I believe great art requires time, and we're not going to force the art out into the ecosystem if both myself or the artist are not completely comfortable with the set. And the third one actually came from Harvey Rayner. And this was like one of the most moving, and this is part of the reason why I love podcasting and these long form conversations, is because things come out that either would be at like a cocktail hour or private dinner or something, but like you're able to like pull out some like really beautiful moments. And when Aston and I were interviewing him, he talked about how he'd been doing art for so long and galleries wouldn't accept him, after, I think it was like 20 years, don't quote me on it, but like roughly, it was a while, right? And then he released Fontana, and it was just opened up this floodgate of opportunity because there was no gatekeepers, right? Like the art was the art, and the art resonated with people. Just because it didn't resonate with a gallerist in his local jurisdiction didn't mean that like the rest of the world wouldn't love it. And it gave me the conviction to say, like, this is something amazing. Like, we're on the cusp of something, and what happens when you eliminate the gatekeepers and you allow art to just flourish? And I had some other mechanisms that were top of mind, and some services that I wanted to furnish to artists on the back end, where I felt like some, again, not gonna name names, but some uh, platforms were transactional. So I wanted to eliminate that. And I felt like in order for the space to advance, I wanted to do my part by creating a platform that allowed artists to the space to create art and the collectors to connect with it and the story and make some meaningful art, for lack of better terms.
I love that. There's been some amazing art drops so far with 8nap Art. So and I love the vision and kind of the mission that you have. And I guess a follow up question on that is just like what do you see next for 8nap Art and for 8nap pass holders?
Yeah, yeah. So there is a special announcement coming for the pass holders. A little bit of alpha coming towards the end of the year. I'm not quite sure, but I'm guessing it will probably be in the Marfa time.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, I posted about this the other day. I just said I've been quiet lately because I'm heads down building and grinding and networking. I've got something special in the mix for 2026, the first Q1, Q2, that I'm really proud of. So for that, I'm like really excited to make the announcement. You and I haven't even talked off camera about like what I'm doing, but so that's gonna be something special, in my opinion. Again, I'm very biased towards like what we're building, but there's a heavy concentration towards curating a set of projects from artists that I have a visceral belief in. I've had everything that's been released is something an artist that I believe in, and I've learned a lot along the way from a curatorial perspective. I think some of the things that were intuitively present prior to the drops, I wish I would have pushed a little bit more. I mean, dude, you're one of the drops hopefully this year, right? You see it offline. Like I push a little bit, like whether respectfully, but like I give some ideas. Have you thought about this? What about that? I don't think that's a good idea, but you're the artist. You do what you want. So I've been finding my curatorial voice a little bit more and really focusing in on the ideation with some of the artists and even mechanisms. Like there's just so much in this space that with blockchain that you're capable of doing. So again, I don't mean to be kitschy, but like what we did with the Patrick Amidon release was amazing to me, right? Like I hope that it picks up. And for those who aren't familiar, it was a set of 7 editions, and each subsequent edition would be you'd get a whitelist or an allow list spot if you own all the previous editions. So the first one was pretty easy. It was like 99 pieces, and it dropped down to 64. So there's 99 whitelist spots. But the cool thing, the dynamic that became really fun is it released one a day at the same time every single day, and it was a decreasing supply. So the last piece was only 8. And so I'm obsessed with editions, and I'm obsessed with like set collecting. And this was just a really cool dynamic. So the second to last was 16, the last was 8. So there's 8 people who got to the finish line but didn't quite get to the finish line, if you know what I mean. And then there's people with partial sets. There's people who, and like one person flipped it. I mean, like it was actually really interesting to see. They got it and almost immediately flipped it into a WETH bid of like 0.8. So they spent all of again, I'm not mad at it. They spent all of the time getting to that final one only to flip it, right? Because like it was 0.4, so 7 pieces, they were in with 0.28. I mean, they made 0.5, half an ETH. I mean, in today's ETH terms, that's almost 2K. Like that's for a week's worth of work. And then on the flip side, you saw some of the people who were like there for the set collecting intentions. I'm going off on a tangent, but they were able to like complete their sets, and like the pride of completing that and the sense of enthusiasm. It was such a cool dynamic. So I was inspired by that. I have a couple new dynamics that I feel have not been placed into the marketplace, and I think that is kind of one of the things I want to do is like innovate. And because I have no investors, it's purely my money. I'm able to do some of this fun stuff. I mean, that's where the auction mechanism started, right? I wanted to create a place where artists could have like an annuity and a revenue stream on a duration that we agree upon upfront. And Delta Sauce is doing that right now, right? Like, yeah. I mean, he has individual pieces go to auction. he's netted additional revenue as a result of some of the rarer pieces coming up to auction and people paying a premium for it. And that primary goes directly into to Delta's pocket. Like that's a success to me. You know, we're minting on a regular basis, and he's getting more revenue than the original mint cost. Like win-win all the way around.
Yeah, I love the minting mechanism that ANAP Art has, and it's cool. It's cool because I mean, issues dropped, and having those those pieces that are coming up for auction on a regular basis, to me, it's always really exciting. It's like reinvigorating about the collection. So I love the collection. We have the issues books, here in our little library over here. I periodically will look through. I think like the book was like really well done, and it was such a good experience.
I was talking to a major artist who hopefully was going to make a commitment for the stuff next, Q1, Q2, and they had one of the books. And it was funny because we were talking about it. He's like, this is a really high quality production book. And I was like, yeah, like that's what we do, right? Like, now, does every project get a book? No. But that's one of the experiences that Delta wanted, right? And so part of this artist accelerator and the white glove experience is like we individualize the release mechanisms and the release dynamics and perks based on what the artist's vision is and like what they want to accomplish. Some people just want ETH. Some people want legacy. Some people want physicals. Like, and that to me is like, it's a harder dynamic, but I think it wins in the long run personally.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I have a huge, like the memory that I have of getting ice cream at the ice cream truck and picking my issues, magazine from the newspaper stand in Los Angeles with Delta Sauce there, just signing books and signing magazines was, dude, that was such an awesome experience. So I really applaud you for the kind of like thoughtful approach to this and really supporting artists with kind of their vision of how they would want to release their work. And I think it's a really great thing. So kudos to you, man.
So I don't know if that answered your question about what's in the works, but we're public about the next 6 months of releases. We got some amazing artists coming up. We're not public about Q1 and Q2, but I'll just say that there's a heavy lift, and we're hoping to do some stuff that's like really, really exciting. And by the end of, this is July 2025, by the end of this month, my hope is to have the majority of the path locked down for that, so we can start grinding into that. And then, I'll say, like, I want to be a place where people can meet during community events. I missed NYC this year for obvious reasons of having a newborn. But, Marfa, I'll be sponsoring some stuff with, art blocks, but also having some events around there. Again, I want community. I want people to know that ANAP is a place where like-minded, passionate art enthusiasts can come, have a meeting of minds, and connect in a meaningful way, whatever meaningful means to you.
I want to talk about Marfa because that is such kind of an important IRL community kind of like get together where people really come 100%. From all over the world just to be there for that weekend. So I really want to hear kind of like your take on Marfa and maybe elaborate too on the IRL piece overall. But what makes Marfa so special, I guess? Yeah,
I'll say IRL is one of the biggest unlocks for this space. I fully acknowledge that because this is Web3 and because it's somewhat boundaryless, meaning like it's all over the world. If you have the means, or you can find the means, or if you're an artist, you can grind, release some art. The investment and the ROI on some of these IRL events is just asymmetric from a connection point. So I 100% would emphasize trying to find a way to do an IRL event or IRL events. That being said, I fully acknowledge Marfa is the least convenient place to get to out of all probably the IRL events. Especially for international, because for those who are not familiar, Marfa is a little town in Texas, in the high desert. And first of all, you have to get to the States. Then you have to somehow get to Texas. Most people go through El Paso. And then once you get to El Paso, you have to drive 3 hours to get to this little town called Marfa. And when I say little, when you're there, I mean, 3 square blocks could probably capture 95% of all activity. So what makes it special? There's a number of things. One, what makes it special is it's partly where Eric Snowfro has decided to put the Art Blocks house and has kind of become a cultural hub. Two, Marfa already has a rich history of art that most people don't know about, but like Donald Judd and others have really kind of set a very amazing culture, and culture in the sense that like it's very much an artisan community and everything functions around the art community and it's like propped up by the art community. But then three, others have invested in the space, like Derek from Collab Plus Currency and Steve to create Glitch Marfa, and they're really starting to expand what we know as like the digital art in a traditional town. Now, all that said, okay, cool, Jared. Like there's an art culture. The thing that makes this special, hands down, is after all the stuff I talked about to get to Marfa, you do not end up in Marfa by accident. You may end up in New York for NFT NYC, for business, for pleasure, but you do not end up in Marfa unless you have the full intent of being in Marfa. And so what happens is a lot of people descend upon Marfa, 1,000, 1,200, right? Descend upon Marfa, and it has a self-selection capacity because like it just can't hold 10,000 people like a Basel or a Miami or a New York. So you're really talking about a space constraint, a logistics constraint, and then a passion constraint. It takes somebody who really wants to be there to overcome all of those barriers. And what happens is what you have is one of the most heavily concentrated meeting of passionate digital artists, collectors, etc., etc. And because you have this like high concentration, you're in 3 square blocks. You freaking run into everybody and their mother all the time, and it's not a bad thing. It's just like, one of my fondest memories is actually the first time I went to Marfa, and it's where I met Harvey. I was in a coffee shop, the line in a coffee shop, and he rolled up behind me, and he's like, "Hey, who are you, and what do you do?" And I was like, "I do this podcast thing." This was like really early in my journey. And he's like, "Cool." I was like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I'm an artist." I'm like, "What's your name?" He's like, "Harvey." And I was like, like Harvey Rayner? He's like, "You heard of me?" And I was like, "Dude, you just released Fontana." Like, and it was like, and it's like, he's like, "You should meet my buddy." And I was like, "All right, cool. Who's your buddy?" He's like, "James Merrill." And I was like, "Okay." Like, and those are those special moments is you're just so close that you're going to have a bunch of unscripted interactions, and those interactions are going to be the things that make Marfa special. So
Yeah.
if you have the means, please find a way there. If you don't have the means, try to find a way there. And if you're international, I understand it's a heavy lift and it's really expensive. But I do believe that the connections that you can make and the relationships that will be made are second to none. Marfa is just something special.
I echo that for sure. And I feel that the community overall is like extremely open and everybody genuinely wants to connect with each other. And so it makes it so easy to just, go to the Art Blocks house and sit down at a picnic table with a group of, 4 other people that are at the table, and you can just easily insert yourself into the conversation. People will welcome you and they'll be curious about who you are, what you do, and
Yeah, I mean, and you may run into people and not know their real names, or maybe they give you their real names but not their online identity. I mean, I've met, but again, it's like once you develop a level of trust, and then like sometimes people will reveal everything, and you're like, oh my God. Like before G Money was, you remember when you used to have like the ape avatar when he was on screen? And my first time, I was like right in front of the Fidenza wall. I'll never forget it, at the Art Blocks house, and I heard him talking, and I just like stopped and turned, and I was like, "G," and he's like, "Do I know you?" And it was like one of those like, and I was like, and then I explained like who I was, and I was like, "Dude, I just recognize the voice. Like I'm not doing anything other than, I'm a huge fan," and it kind of like broke that barrier. It was just like, it was a lot of fun. It's something that my words will never do it justice, but Eric has created something special around that for digital art collectors. And there's a reason why people fly from Europe and Tokyo and all over the world to be there, is because it is something special.
for sure. Yeah. Australia, like everywhere. Yeah, it's so cool. How do you think that may change if we have a influx, let's say, of new artists and collectors in the space who become more aware of the Marfa community experience annually. And do you think that we'll be able to maintain that
I hope so. I hope so. But I mean, who knows? A couple 2 years ago, there were some big NFT influencers, like who's not Thread Guy or whatever, like who were like hanging out there, like, and I think they were like chasing the attention at the time because art was there, and then now they're not, right? They weren't there the year after. So I think there's going to be an ebb and flow. Do I ever see it being, like Basel? Maybe 10, 20 years from now. But it's also self-selecting. Like, you can't get it there. I hope it maintains its sense of, like, community and its very innocent nature of being just, like, a really great place to connect. But I'm a realist and realize that, like, some of it will be commercialized. And I think you're starting to see that already.
For sure. Yeah, I understand that. It's been really interesting. The sentiment has been fairly low. I mean, a few weeks ago, Beeple released his daily artwork about generative art being dead, and that's been the talk of the town a little bit. Is generative art dead? And I've reflected a little bit just on the fact that it seems like just maybe 2 months ago, Ethereum overall was kind of in a similar spotlight of, is Ethereum dead? The sentiment seems like it has shifted pretty dramatically in the last 2 months for Ethereum. I'm curious what your take is right now on the overall sentiment in the generative art and digital art space, and how do you kind of see things unfolding, especially if we have greater interest kind of in the Ethereum and cryptocurrency space overall?
There's a lot of questions there. I will start by saying the sentiment around digital art, I couldn't be more bullish. It sounds crazy to say this, but I think there's a lack of speculators providing liquidity, and there's a lack of volume. I completely acknowledge that, right? I remember when I used to do the weekly updates with on Collector's Corner, it was like, there was 100 squiggle sales, right? Like, and it's like, oh, it's a down week. There was only 62, right? Like, and now, like, this week, because I reported on it, there was 10, and we're like, oh my God, there's 10, like, Gen Art's back. So I fully acknowledge that there's a lack of liquidity, but I think that if you take a step back at, like, what's being built right now, I couldn't be more bullish. I mean, like, but how many times has something been, like, pronounced dead, just like Ethereum was, and then it, like, comes rip-roaring back? I love when the sentiment hits a low, because that presents long-term opportunities, in my opinion. And I think the question becomes of, like, what is your core thesis? Now, I don't know, like, if your core thesis was like, hey, shitcoin X is like the next best thing, and it wasn't, like, that's why diversification is like applauded. But I think when you're looking at something like Ethereum, or like Ethereum is like, everybody's like, oh, Ethereum is dead, Solana's gonna whatever. Maybe Solana does something. I'm pretty sure Solana finds its niche, Sui finds its niche. But last time I checked, financial institutions are building on Ethereum. They're building on their L2s. And last time I checked, the names on the side of most buildings in major metropolitan areas are banks. They didn't get their names on these buildings for making dumb decisions, right? So take that what you may. I think Ethereum's here to stay, to answer that question. Gen Art. I have more conviction in Gen Art than just about any other art right now. AI art and Gen Art, and then glitch art for like cultural reasons. But Gen Art is so intuitive to me if you believe in blockchain art. If you believe art on the blockchain will be a thing in the next 5, 10, 20, 150 years, Gen Art is so intuitive. It's one of the first art mechanisms that is dependent or reliant on the blockchain through the transaction hash to create the art. There's something so serendipitous about generative art and these outputs. I don't know why more people don't look at this and say, we are so frickin' lucky to have the goose ringer. We are so lucky to have this squiggle that's in my wallet, or this low color spread slinky, whatever it is, right? Because the statistical likelihood of a lot of this stuff happening is so low. I think like when Dandelion was talking about, QQO, he referenced like they could have run the Fidenza model like 10,000 times and not gotten the God mode Fidenza. Do you know how frickin' special that is? I mean, I'm serious. Like, there's something that's so special about generative art and the mechanism of an artist obsessing over these rules and then letting the universe use those rules to create something. Like it's so beautiful, and I think it ages extremely well. I think we're just in a period of time where artists are either they're doing exactly what I want them to do, which is spend the time, develop an algorithm so it's really bitchin'. So when it comes out, people get excited about it. Like I think that's what's up next is like you're going to see my hope is that you see an influx from some. I mean, Snowfro is going to release something with Glitch, right? I'm privy to some of these other ones of what's going on, and it's like I know there's great gen art coming. So I think it's far from dead. And when people are so like Beeple created it just because of the poll that Cause put out there and people's response. Like he's capturing a cultural zeitgeist of some moment, but it's when sentiment is that low, not to like grandstand here, but when sentiment is that low, I have a tendency to lean into it and try to think, why are people feeling this way? And I understand why they're feeling that way. I'm empathetic to it. Like if you bought something, in the last cycle for 20 ETH and it's selling for like 0.3, like there's some real pain there. I get that. I also think that is a short-term like perspective, and as humans, especially when it comes to finances, those have high emotional impact. When I see those high emotional impacts, I try to take a step back and understand why people feel that way and what it could mean for the future. Is there validation to it? Are the crypto dinos or whatever it is, tiny dinos, is that project ever going to be worth 100 ETH again? I don't know. Are memories of Chilin and anticyclones undervalued? Not financial advice, but in my opinion, yes, right? Like, because it's fallen victim to these things, right? ETH at 1,500 when people were like, oh, it's going to be done. Guess what? It's 3,500 today. Like, do you believe in ETH? Do you believe the future of, building on the blockchain could go through Ethereum? Yes. Okay. Are you willing to hold on to it for long enough? Yes. Okay. Like, that's kind of what my philosophy is like, I think people have a disjointed, short-term expectations versus the long-term performance. So being able to reconcile those two different perspectives, I think, is something that could really benefit a lot of people, and I think it will help really ground a lot of people in like not only the investments that they're making, but it's really easy to say, oh, I collect for the art, and then it goes down and they're like, gen art's dead. Well, who cares? You have some dope art. I thought we all were here for the art. The reality is and Bat Soup Yum had a really great post about this. We are here for the art, and it's okay to be here for the finances also.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a taboo subject, especially for artists and collectors. But I think that I totally agree with that as well. I know for me in the last month or two, I've really been adding to my collection, my personal collection, because I haven't like the long-term thesis is still totally intact.
Still intact. It's more vibrant now than ever. If anything, this is what's funny to me is like people are like, gen art's dead. How about we flip that perspective and say, holy cow, I'm able to buy pieces that I didn't have access to previously and build the collection that I want to. Or how about the mint prices are lower than think about this. Meridians in the heyday were minting for 5 ETH. 5 ETH. And, recently I had the opportunity to buy a Pixel Dex mint one. Then they went from half an ETH to an ETH, and I think the floor is around 8. Like I feel grateful to be here at this time. I feel grateful to be able to acquire stuff for 0.1, 0.2, 0.5. Like, let everybody think gen art's dead, because that means I'm able to stack my bags at a really attractive price.
Totally. I find myself gravitating a lot towards some of the collections that I really connected with, kind of fell in love with back in 2021, 2022, where, 3-4 years ago, I felt like, what? I love this collection. I love what this artist is doing. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get one.
Now you got one.
And now it's like, whoa, okay, just acquired that. I just bought this piece, and now I look at my collection. I'm like, I feel so good about that, and to be able to support these artists as well. And it's hard to know for me in the short term, let's say, like kind of what sentiment might be like. And I'm not 100% sure, but overall, I personally have I see a lot of really passionate people, really smart people, really talented people in this space. And it feels like we're part of this really beautiful, organic kind of grassroots movement that is beginning to like the early stages of like acceptance or integration into even like these more traditional art. What's the museum, the Toledo Museum, and I think it's in Ohio. They just had that, and it's ongoing right now, that exhibition with some really incredible displays of generative art. And you just, I can only imagine what it would be like to see it in person, but even just looking at pictures and watching videos on Twitter on my phone, I'm like, oh my God, that's really amazing. And this is kind of some of the stuff that we feel like is accessible right now, that we feel so passionate about. And it feels like it's becoming more widely understood and appreciated. And if we have this continued longer term adoption and acceptance of the underlying technology, there's bound to be an increasing number of people probably that become curious about this digital art movement that's happening, I think.
I would recommend everybody to be patient. I mean, I think that that's the biggest problem is patience and long-term perspective. I'm advocating that digital art right now is the equivalent to Bitcoin in 2013. You know, if you were fortunate enough to be around Bitcoin in 2013, you were probably screaming, why doesn't anybody see this? This is going to revolutionize the financial system. This is a more efficient way to transact. What the hell? And nobody was listening. Then 2016, 2017 came, speculation, Google searches Bitcoin, and then it dropped off and everybody forgot about it, right? Then 2020 came and it wasn't until 2024 that we had 11 years after my Bitcoin 2013 analogy that we get an ETF and institutions can even think about it. Then institutions still don't want to touch it, right? Like, at least not like some will, but like at least not to scale. And it's like a vindication point. Like, they finally figured it out. I think, on a long enough timeline, we're going to be able to, have a reunion on this day and say, 10 years from now and say, they finally figured it out, right? It's why I appreciate what Toledo's doing. There's a couple other museums that are like really advocating, but, we also have to do it on a grand scale. I mean, one of the beauties, because like, no offense, I'm not going to Toledo anytime soon. Sure, it's a wonderful city. The pictures look amazing, but I'm not going to Toledo, right? And I think that that's still a little bit of like the bubbles. And, one of the things I'm ideating around is like how to advocate, but on a grander scale. Things that are going to reach more audiences. Like how does the education, how do you inspire future generations? I mean, I actually just shared this story with an artist the other day. It's like my passion for art. I remember there was a museum in Boston that had a Jackson Pollock. I was probably like 10, 11 years old. That's my first really like deep inspiration with art. When I literally looked at it and I said, why is this special? Some dude just splatter painted things. I could do that. And it was a seed that was planted that I didn't realize until 30 years later, that it was like a seed for passion, a seed for like a curiosity, a seed for looking at art and thinking, why is this special? My hope is that we're going to, through these activities, the podcast, in all fairness, like the Toledo, people in that geographic region are going to be able to see that. And I truly believe 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, there's going to be people talking about that exhibition because it would have planted a seed for things. And for me, it's like, what can we be doing now to plant as many seeds as possible? Because you just never know which ones are going to grow, right? Like we could all think like, oh, we're going to have this big Sam Spratt exhibition and it's going to blow people's minds. And then, some people see it, some people are inspired, but it wasn't the grand event. And that's not a knock on Sam Spratt. I actually love his work. And I think that's part of the reason it's so amazing. Like people should see it. But the reality for me is, you have to, I think Dan Collins in Good to Great talked about this. Like you have to fire bullets and then fire cannonballs. And the whole concept is you fire a lot of bullets until something hits. And then once the concept hit the target, you fire the cannonball. You go all in. I think we're in the firing bullets category right now. And watching what everybody's trying to do and what we're experimenting with is very, very uplifting. I think that, I want to be at the forefront of some of this experimentation and that stereotypical F around and find out, right? FAFO. That's where we're at right now, right?
For sure, for sure. Who do you see are some of the thought leaders in this space, like some of the people that you're either inspired by, or even just on a more personal level, like that you tend to listen to and you appreciate their perspective?
I'll say 4 names. Snowfro Eric is by far one of the best thought leaders. I mean, the guy's been so consistently ahead of the curve. He claimed punks. He doesn't claim punks. He claimed zombies, right? Like, so he claimed them. He created art blocks. He was a mod or not maybe a mod officially, but like, for punks. But he was just so ungodly early. Like when you see the Mount Rushmore of artists or art founders in 20 years, it's my collecting thesis around squiggles too. It's like there's not a world, and I might sound crazy about this. Full disclosure, I own squigglemaxi.eth, so that's where my bias is. It's so obvious to me that he's because it wasn't just blockchain. Like he was doing these squiggles in his tile business. He was printing. He was like, his brain thinks so far ahead of most people's action. It's stifling. You have to like literally like, at least for me, because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, I have to listen to like a lot of his interviews 2-3 times because he's saying so much stuff and it's so dense in a great way, dense with information. He's future projecting without people really realizing it. So he's amazing. Somebody who I don't know why they don't have like a boatload more followers is Derek Edwards from Collab Plus Currency. Just absolute big brain. Ironically, from an investment perspective, he's been, we don't like to talk about the financialization, but he's been early to just about every single trend. He's a dynamic thinker. He's very succinct with his words. He's very deep in his thought. It's just incredible. Jedi Wolf is, in my opinion, consistently putting out some of the best content on a daily or semi-daily basis. The thoughts are just so prolific. And then it's not just the thoughts, but then you go dig into like, if he doesn't have the best, it's probably top 2 best X copy collections in the world. I'm not kidding. It's mind-blowingly good when you actually realize like he's not just an X copy maxi. He put his money where his mouth is, or his ETH. And then you start to think. Then you look at his AI collection under the Gon, and I'm like, oh my god, he's done it twice. He's made probably an unattainable X copy collection that will never be put together again by anybody. And then he did it with AI. It's incredible. And then you look at the generosity. He's like giving away some AI pieces. He's giving away his knowledge free of charge. He doesn't have like a newsletter. He doesn't have just every time I talk about like his work on Spaces, like almost every Friday is a tweet post from Jedi, and it's like, what do you think about this? And it's like, these are really deep, thought-provoking topics that he's consistently hitting on a regular basis. It's mind-blowing to me. I scroll through his feed and his posts just for inspiration. It's that dynamic. And then I think that there's some new people that I'm loosely touching. Their posts and their thought process, but like Mr. Merge, SQDA, and a few others. They're posting really, John Sears, some really great content on a regular basis, and I just have a utmost appreciation for it. And then like again, 6529 and his long form posts are like
legendary.
Insane. Legendary, yeah, like legendary. I have a ton of them bookmarked. And then Cosimo, if you aren't subscribed to his newsletter, I have zero affiliation to him, but the Medici Minutes every Friday, you have to. Like, there's so many tidbits, and again, it's so dense, and he's so dynamic in his thought that if you just like headline read and scroll through it, you'll miss some of the intent. Like, he's planted more seeds with that newsletter in my brain than I can even make reference to, because a lot of like what I'm inspired by have been seeds that these people have planted.
It's such an important thing to thoughtfully curate your Twitter feed. A lot of people, I think, are primarily using Twitter to really stay up to date and understand what artists and collectors, so really what the community is, how they're feeling, what they're doing, new information, new drops, things like that. So it's a impossible task to do it perfectly. It just taking a really thoughtful approach and really thinking about as your feed is continuously being updated, how does it actually match with kind of like your values or your interests or what you're actually trying to, whatever your long-term strategy is, or for whatever personal reasons, and being mindful about that, because I think it's just information overload. And you see enough times in your Twitter feed that Ethereum is dead or that generative art is dead, and I feel like there's it could be a bit of like human nature to then kind of doubt yourself a little bit, or
I'm
to.
not saying don't be emotional. I think we're emotional creatures. Like emotions is what brought me to art. Like I'm inspired by artists every single day. Like I'm so grateful to have this opportunity. Like words can't express how fortunate I feel I am. Like it's mind-blowingly. Like I have to pinch myself because it's like, why me? Why am I have this opportunity to do something that I freaking love and connect with people in a meaningful fashion that like lift me up every single day? Like that's the dream, right? Like I'm living the dream. Like people ask how you doing? I'm living the dream. I literally am living the dream. Like I'm living my dream. But the X feed is something that you're spot on. If you can curate it in a fashion that is advantageous, do it, and just check your emotions when it comes to investments. Like these investments are there's people with a lot more money than you that are out there. I don't want to say manipulating, but moving markets in a way that are advantageous to them. And this is, whether we like it or not, it's a PvP world in crypto and in digital art. And in that scenario, guess what? There's a winner and there's a loser. The goal isn't the goal is to have enough chips in the game, but also like sustain on a long enough timeline. The other thing I want to say is like collecting art, because everybody's like, oh, like what do you collect art for? It's like, I collect it for the art. And I think you should collect the way you want to collect. That's my big thing right now, right? Like you see some people on the timeline, they're constantly buying stuff, and that's nice if you have a ton of ETH. It's not my style. I don't want a collection with 2,000 pieces. I'm more strategic. Like I'm like you. I'm like, there's things I like. I'm not going to be the first mover, but I'll be early. Like I won't mint, but I probably will be early. And I think that like when you're able to start to think about like what type of collector you want to be, what resonates with you. And don't get me wrong, when I was early, like I don't hide anything in my wallet, just for the record. You can go into my wallet and see I have a bunch of junk from a long time ago that like I was like, please give me the ETH back. Like I want the ETH. Like, so I did do that early on. But for me, it then became like, oh, I'm not good at spotting stuff at mint time. Now, I do have some mints that, like, I have a line draw and some others that, like, I ended up being okay with, but it's because the story leading up to it, I didn't have FOMO. Like, I did the research. I connected with the story. I connected with the art, and I was like, this is something special. But if you notice, I don't mint a lot. And instead, I'm, like, sit back and I observe, and this is my style, right? I'm not saying it's for everybody. I wish I could tell you I minted X copies or a Fidenza or a Squiggle. Like, I wasn't there. So instead, like for me, I'm collecting the stuff that, is deeply resonant with me. Also in your feed, when you see people buying stuff, don't feel like you have to go buy something because they bought it or because they're buying this artist, you have to go do that. Like do your research. My recommendation is do the research, like connect with the artist in a meaningful fashion that you like doing business with or like collecting. And, like one of those for me is like Delta Sauce. Like Delta is like one of the best people in this space. He's like so thoughtful and caring, and I'll support anything he does. I love his art. I love him. Like that's the perfect blend. And I just think that things like when you're able to find somebody like that, I think it wins on a long enough timeline, right? Because good people and good art, like it's pretty undefeated.
For me, something that I want to hear from you, your perspective is for someone who you kind of just touched on this a little bit, but for someone who is interested in maybe starting their own art collection, like a digital art collection, if they were to start with $200, what would be your opinion of where they could where they could start? Maybe an artist, a collection, platform. Yeah.
Yeah, $200 is tough. The problem is there's not like $200 is like today, for reference, today's Ethereum price is like $3,500. So you're talking about roughly 0.05 ETH.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be just continue to save. But all joking aside, I think that there are some amazing pieces. The problem is like at 0.05, like you're basically spending it on one piece. But I think if you're willing to go outside the risk curve, there's and stretch a little bit. It's about $200 right now. One of my favorite. I feel like for $200, you have to kind of start to go on some alternate chains, maybe some old foundation work. Rodeo editions is probably the place to go. You can get like a lot of bang for your buck there. But I mean, for $200, I put it all into. There's a Alcon, and I can never pronounce his last name. It goes by Evergreen Dazed. Isn't a phenomenal AI artist, and he's got a project on Solana called Strata. Full disclosure, I own a ton, and I'm actively buying right now, so that's why it's top of mind. But I think Alcon ages extremely well. I think he's an amazing artist. I think he is so progressive, and once you understand his story, which I think we could advocate storytelling and people's genesis story a little bit more, you start to realize like he's just a big brain. He's releasing in, I think, Turkey, the first ever fully AI movie. Like, he could potentially be the one who changes the way we enjoy cinematic experiences. Everybody's looking for like, oh, this is the first of this is the first of that. Like, this is a big deal. Like he literally could have just changed, I think he's in the process of changing the tide for how movies are made. Oh, and then you realize like he was a movie producer, and like, all of this stuff before, anyways. Strata to me is by far one of the most undervalued collections, and not financial advice, around. But if I had $200, that's where I put it. Maybe Smile by Rope Renisto, again, on Soul, I think is just, you can find some gems for, man, I don't even know where the floor is at these days. It's probably like $40-$50. But if we're talking ETH, man, there's some really great AI art you can start to find around that. There's I'd buy some friendship bracelets, and then I would probably go into like Rodeo or Foundation and just find some artists that I love, because you can still find like some Delta Sauce editions for like $40, and others, right? It's not just about Delta Sauce, but I mean, I think there's some really great. I would be a little bit more speculative and get some really great up and coming. I think Fellowship's daily pieces, they go under the radar. You can still find some Shieldrick pieces and others that are fairly cost effective. If you want to put in the work, it's highly not easily searchable online, but I mean, there's some really great pieces. There's another great AI artist I like, Nomad and something. I don't know, I'm drawing a blank, but they just released on Fellowship as part of the daily program. And like, I just think there's so much great art out there. You roll up your sleeves.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that is the truth, right? Is that it's obviously you can buy more, and you can buy more higher valued pieces and collections with more money, but even just coming in and starting with $200, there's still, I guess, some avenues that people can take to learn more about different artists and collections that are in the space, and some of these are very accessible overall to the majority of people. So
yeah, the one thing I would say is like, try to have a plan. And if your plan is just buy and support artists, like, that's fine too. That's a plan, loose plan. But like, I've been pretty frank with you off camera about like what my aspirations are for my collection, and it's like, I have a plan, and I'm being malicious about like executing that plan. And I'm not public about it, but I have like big aspirations, and I'm I'll say one publicly is like, I want to have a punk for every single one of my family members. Von Mises has it, and I think that that's a really admirable goal, and I think that on a long enough timeline, it's going to age extremely well.
So what about someone who wants to enter the space as a collector, and they have a little bit more capital to work with? Let's say $2,000 or $20,000. I know there's a big gap there, but just curious about what your take would be.
No matter what your budget is, I think you have to find the stuff that resonates with you, right? And then start to decide what kind of collect. Like with $20,000, because I'll take that because it's a little bit more leeway, you could buy one squiggle. If you like squiggles, go buy a freaking squiggle. But then all your eggs are in that basket. If you believe in Gen Art, you believe it's going to be the forefront of it. But if you just want, $20,000 on the same thing with like the Fellowship Daily or the rodeo stuff, like, will go a long way. Then you can have like thousands of pieces of art, right? I think you should define what it is that you want to be as a collector, and then like, are you really here just because the art go on the screen, or do you really have some expectation, even if you dig down deep, for price appreciation. If even if it was just a vaguely yes, I would do the research into Art. An article, artacle.io, again, no affiliation to them, is a great place for data and analytics, where it aggregates a lot of the art data to be able to do the research. I do think that, and then patience. This is the big thing. Patience. Dude, you just wreathed a beautiful piece, right? Patience. Understand the nuance of a collection. Put in collection bids on a trait and wait, right? Unless there's like a piece that you have to have and it's, listed at the floor, jump it. But like to in my opinion, like we just saw a Guide 1 anti-cyclone sell for 3 ETH. I never thought in my wildest dreams I would see a Guide 1 at 3 ETH, right? And somebody listed it. Like, keep the weaths out there. Smoke and Fire palette for memories. Do it. Was the prismatic for a Meridian. We saw those get weathed the other day. Like, patience. Like, patience and due diligence would be my recommendation is have a plan, understand a collection, understand what you like about the collection. And the right response is, I just want anything. Fine, put in a weath bid and get whatever comes out. Like, with everything being dead, that means things are sitting and people are eager for liquidity.
So what are you most excited about in the future, really, for our space, for the generative art, digital art space,
everything,
for our crypto art?
I think it's going to be a whirlwind. I think that you putting in the work here, me with 8nap, we're going to have the foundations for setting some stuff. And if you are able to persist and create the longevity within the space, I think that there's real opportunity to be have some sphere of influence, whether it's big as or small as a contributor and community member. I just think that we're on the cusp of something amazing. I think the digital art movement in particular, as a category, blockchain art, is so grossly misunderstood and underrepresented. And I look around every single day and feel fortunate because there's so much talent. There's so much talent that would have previously not had. I mean, I'm talking to artists right now in Malaysia, India, Vietnam, Europe. Like these are people who would have never had an opportunity to like step foot in a gallery, let alone sell their art for 1 ETH, that are now doing it and changing their lives. And I think the more that becomes a reality for people, and the more those stories come out, the more talent that is currently hidden in every corner of the earth is going to come out. And I think we're just going to see a modern day digital renaissance with the adaptation. I'm serious. Think about when we're all in the AR space and it's like, this is the digitally displayed and we can share it. It's so obvious to me. We'll see how that plays out. But I couldn't be more bullish. My recommendation is, if you're a collector, reach out to somebody who is meaningful to you, a content creator, an artist. Get in their DMs. Tell them thank you. Tell them what they've been meaning for. If you're a creator, push yourself to grow bigger, expand. Like, this is your podcast. This is like your legacy. This is what you're doing to influence the space and bring joy to those who are willing to listen. Like, this is what we are. Like, we're capable of doing great things. I challenge everybody to dig a little bit deeper and become the collector, the advocator, the builder that you hoped was in the space.
Awesome, man. Okay, well, man, it was a real pleasure chatting with you. How can people reach you if they have any questions? You can
find me on X at Jared_Poz, P-O-Z. I run 8nap Art. Please follow 8nap_art. If you want to be involved, there is something called an 8nap Art Pass. Again, no promises, but hopefully some big things coming. Those are my loyal collectors, so I will always reward them first. Follow 8nap Art. We are trying to change things and bring in new dynamics. Even so much so as like our minting mechanic. You mint to a wallet, connect to Hot Wallet, mint to your vault. Like safety, like being deep into the community and understanding what the needs are is one of our core values. So, and conversely, if you liked anything on this, like repost it, tag me, or slip into my DMs. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. Let me know if you have a competing opinion. What am I missing? Like, I want this to be a conversation. So please engage. Make this a meaningful space to whatever degree that means to you.
Awesome, man. Okay, dude. Jared, it was awesome seeing you, man. Great conversation. And
brilliant.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Appreciate the space, brother.
All right. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube, and give me a follow on Twitter at longformart. As mentioned, none of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment and information purposes only. More information can be found in the podcast episode description. And thanks so much for listening in. I'll be back soon with another episode.